Okay, welcome to an evening live stream. Today is Thursday, I think, and we just had the new Logic 10.7.7 update, and this came pretty quickly after the last one. It feels like just like a month, and it's really targeting a specific issue, and this is an issue which I've posted about on the channel and done streams about because it's super frustrating. So I figured I would give you guys a couple hours of warning and we could look at this and I'll show you exactly what this update is fixing. And it's only one thing. It's the analysis of flex pitch. Let me get logic behind me here. What we're looking at is the issue. This is in one of the songs that I was working on. This was a set of files that I actually had to trash and re-record because I couldn't figure out a way around this. And so this is it. This is the issue. Flex pitch right up here behind me. All of these notes are on C0. And it sounds okay when you play. It sounds like when you record it, but you can't move any of the flex pitch around. And so this update fixes this problem and allows you to go back and fix the previous issues. And so one of the things I thought was interesting with this update, it's a little bit different than some of the updates I've seen recently. The release notes say fixes an issue with flex pitch analysis in Logic Pro on Mac OS Ventura. And then it actually gives us a link with instructions on how to do this. Excuse me. So it explains the issue a little bit more and then just says essentially reanalyze the audio files. So I haven't reanalyzed these specific audio files yet. I thought I would wait to do that on a live stream. I've got a backup of this project. In fact, this track wasn't one I was using, but I'm certainly curious to see what happens. And then I will talk about moving forward if the issue is really fixed and what that looks like. But we have this file selected. Oh, wait, where did it go? Which one am I on? This is one. Let's do edit, analyze audio for flex editing. So that's under the edit window of the track audio editor. So this is where we find flex pitch and so forth. But right down here, analyze audio for flex editing. And let's see if this fixes it. Fingers crossed, because okay, just for the record, let's turn it back on and off. Well, this is funny because now we don't have any flex data in there. I mean, you're all watching this with me. I'm scrolling up and down. There's no flex pitch data. Let's try it one more time. Do. And there it is. Okay, so I had to do it twice. Still better than having to re-record, I suppose. And there we have it. So I'm not going to play this. It looks like what it is here because of how horrible the original performance was. But I think I didn't have that issue with any of the other tracks. So what was going on was when I was recording in loop mode, for instance, using the selection at the top, the cycle range, and then you loop and put it into take folders, I was getting that error a lot. And so instead of doing this with the cycle region and also without doing take folders, I was just recording one vocal at a time, listening to it and then re-recording it into like a new track each time. That was solving the issue for me. But now I just did a test in one of my other projects where I went through and actually did the cycle and did take folders, and it worked. So it is working with new recordings now. So you can actually go back, if you upgrade to this, if you were having this issue, you can go back to using the take folders with the cycle region, and seems to be working great. If you don't know how to actually do that, just really quickly, if you go to your Logic settings under recording, this is where we can do this right here, where the overlapping track recordings for audio either does a take folder, a new track, or a track alternative. And you can do that for cycle on or cycle off with that. And so that's for anytime you have an overlapping region. And so now it's working just as it should be. You could do any of those options. Now, is it kind of a bummer when we get an update from Logic that they fix one thing? Yes and no. I mean, it's awesome that they're fixing anything, right? I mean, this is like a big deal. This was a huge workflow that definitely, in my limited world, like screwed over like a few hours of recording, and I had to go back and find a new way around it. When the previous versions, we had never had any issues with this at all, as far as I can tell. And so that's a bummer. But the fact that they come out and make a fix on something that's clearly broken, that they broke, is a big deal. We can now say, that we're right up there with Reaper, because Reaper is just amazing with this. Let's give Reaper a hand, because they always are talking about how they fix the bugs that come up, and now we can say, Logic is fixing the bugs that come up, even though it's like, why? How did that happen? How did that bug actually get into this at all? Anyway, I'd love to see, we have a few people on. I'd love to hear what bugs you're still facing that you wish Apple would fix, if there's any. I mean, I'm sure that none of you have any issues whatsoever with the software. Never had a single bug in your life on this thing, and nothing ever is broken with it, right? Okay, I digress, but I mean, I'm curious, like, what things are you still facing that if you could have Apple do one thing to fix them, what would it be? Put that in the comments. I'd love to hear. And I'd also like to hear if anyone else had faced this issue before they put out this fix. How many of you were actually running into this particular issue along the way? Because, I know I ran into it, and I'm pretty sure that, Apple watches my YouTube channel and probably found out that bug because of me. I'm being facetious completely. I'm sure that none of those things are true, but who knows? So that's it. That's the new 10.7.7 update. Pretty straightforward. There wasn't, I don't think there was any other clues to any other things that were optimized, fixed, or anything. And so we literally just got that one thing, and it's 10.7.7. I mean, how many times have we gone above a 0.7 on these fixes? Let's go look real quick. I should have known, but 10.6.3 was the highest there. 10.5.1 was the highest there. 10.4.8, so one more point above 7 on that one. 10.3.3. Let's see, 10.2.4. 10.1. I think this one just went 10.1.1. And then, let's see, 10.0 I think went up to 0.7. So there's only one version that has done an additional point update than the one we're on now, which means we should be looking for a 10.8 for one of our next updates, unless there's another critical one like this. The other thing that I think is interesting is, because they so rarely ever gone to a 10.8 or a 10 point anything 0.8, I wouldn't be surprised if they're behind the scenes working on the 11. You know what I mean? It's like, are they really? What happens after 10.8 and 10.9? I mean, at some point they're gonna skip something and go up to 11, so it's pretty quick. Um, and then Mr. Fred says no issues, just a few requests like fold piano roll to scale, and like Ableton. That makes sense. I mean, we all have our feature requests that we're looking for, and certainly I think that we're we never really get the ones we want, except for this last update. I gotta say, we really did for the first time get a bunch of things that we wanted um, in the 10.7.5, which I thought was really impressive. It was a weirdly big point upgrade halfway between 7 and 8. And maybe that's the new thing to slow down a little bit. It wouldn't have been too many years ago that that big of an update would have been a 10.8. And they would have said, hey, 10.8, you have gain, a gain tool for audio gain adjustments. But maybe they're like, ooh, crap, we're running out of numbers. Let's do a 10.7.5. Make up for the one where it was like 1 point upgrade before they just like blitzed and went to the next big number. Um, I don't know why they. It's like I wish I could see behind the curtain and understand why they do some of those things. Like what's the point of some of their numbering scheme? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. In the same way that some of the other workstations actually are probably just as chaotic, I guess. And Paris Williams says full piano roll to scale would be definitely ideal, and maybe more scales. Both of those I think are solid ideas. Um, what is it about the full piano roll to scale that you both really want? Let me know in the chat because I'm curious, like what it is about that specific feature that you're like, ooh, that's what I want. Um, I'm just typing it in. Interesting. Removes every note besides what you've got written on your piano roll. As far as I knew, we already have that feature. Maybe I'm missing something though. Um, Let me see what I have up here with my bass track. So let's close automation down. I mean, isn't that what this button does? Is that not the feature you're talking about? What is different between that and what you're suggesting, I guess is my question. Let me know in the chat because that seems like, based on what I was just reading about the Ableton. I mean, I'm not saying that it's the same thing. I'm just asking, for instance, what's the difference between those things? Like, what is it about? Oh, okay. So it's like a lock to a scale kind of function. So you can say like, I want to have a C major scale here, and those are the only notes that are going to show up. Is that what that is? If that's what it is, then I see some value in that for sure. Although there are ways to kind of do the same thing in here, like when you do scale quantize and you get to choose, only the notes that you're playing will do it. Or for instance, when you're using one of the tools here, like the brush tool, so it's like you see how it skips the notes right there because it's only playing in the C major scale. And so for me, you can get there without having the exact same thing. So if you do the brush or any other tool and you're, for instance, just playing any of the notes, then I think it works. The other thing that's really interesting that I think is similar but not exactly the same, maybe it's useful. If you're playing with like in anything besides C major, right? C major is all of the white keys on the keyboard, the piano. And someone's like, well, I'm doing the song in E flat. What I end up doing if I'm not as comfortable with a certain scale is using the transpose MIDI effects, which allows me to, let's open this up. Where are you? Oh, it's on the other window. So this one, it lets me say, I can transpose this in any direction. So then I can just remain on all the white keys and play in any key signature that is thrown at me. I don't do that often because I can play in other keys, but certainly that's another option in some of those cases. Let's see. We want to do that with built-in keyboard or MIDI controller. I know you can do that in the sequencer. Yes, that's how I do it as well from Bjorn. Yeah, there's options. It's no software is going to be exactly the same. Ableton does a lot of things right. I'm not even going to lie. I love Ableton. Just like Studio One does a lot of things right. I don't think Logic necessarily does everything wrong, but it certainly has room to keep on improving. And some of those things we haven't seen much improvement on of late. It's like we keep on getting things that are improvements, but not always in the areas that I think are real, true, amazing improvements. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes it's like, okay. I guess we needed more loops and some of those packs from those producers, or it's like, okay, cool. I do like having more drum sounds and percussion stuff. Is that what's going to make or break my next production? I don't know. I have the things that I like to work with on a regular basis. So interesting on all of those. Thanks for getting in the chat and actually talking, Mr. Fred and Paris and Bjorn as well. Because I love hearing, this is the kind of stuff I'm interested in, is what all of you are interested in. Because I think that's where I learn kind of on the ground what people are like. I wish it did this. I wish it did that. I wish it did this. It's cool. I find with Logic and with most workstations, there are so many things you can do in different ways that are actually really, I think, valuable. And so I definitely wouldn't, let me turn that off. Or there's like 1,000 ways of doing the same thing, I guess is more what I mean. You can do the same task in like a handful of ways. And does it make it right or wrong because you do it differently to somebody? I don't think so. Mr. Fred says an improved browser. And I 1,000,000% agree with this. And actually, I agree with anyone who says that they want plugin search. It's like these things that we kind of take for granted a little bit of in some of the other workstations. But for instance, Studio One, FL Studio, Ableton, a lot of those things handle like your effects so much better than Logic. Here's what I have to do for Logic. Say I want to put like something on this track. I got to like go to my plugin thing. It shows me my recent ones, which sometimes lines up, but then it's like, I got to go down here to audio units to get to my waves and like, or figure out, wait, was that this one, or where is that one? It's like they're down there. What a pain in the butt. Why can't I have like the window over here with my library, which in addition to all the instruments also has just like effects. I type in like the first 2 letters of a plugin name, pop it up, and I can drag that out onto my like track. Geez, what the heck? Why can't I do that? That to me seems like insanity. But Mr. Fred, thanks for watching. One 1:20 a.m. So where would that make you be? That's not like England. I think we're 8 hours away. Northern Canada. Anyway. Mr. Fred says exactly the right thing. They're all just tools. We managed back in Logic 8, back in the day. It's true. It's like, what situation have we gotten into that we have to complain about having even more easy things? I was teaching my students in class the other day about 2-inch tape and just some of the workflows involved with that. When I first started as a student, Pro Tools really hadn't figured itself out yet. And so we were still recording. I recorded all my first projects to analog tape. Big old 2-inch Atari machine, and it was glorious. It's like something was amazing about having to load it up, rewind it because we always stored it tails out, check everything, make sure that it had been calibrated. And then when you record it, it's like you have to push this transport thing was this huge box record arm, rewind it, play it, listen, punch in. You have to do a punch in so carefully because you could overwrite things. And that limitation was amazing. I loved it. But do I want to go back to it? Not really. Bjorn says 2:21 here in Sweden, so probably UK or Portugal. Gotcha. UK. Okay. Sweet. Mr. Fred says, one thing I wanted to ask about user library on external drive. Yeah, I mean, I've done that for many years. I don't do it right now, but that's because I got one of the new Mac Studio Ultras and, the multi-terabyte internal drive. And so everything is on, all of my instruments and stuff are on the internal drive because it is so fast and efficient. And then I store all of my non-critical stuff outside of that drive so I keep some space. But like orchestras, I mean, we're talking like, I can't even load like really easily a template with all the orchestras, but software instrument track, I'll just pull open one of my east-west ones. Like, look at this. I got to go all the way down and figure out where it is, right? What a pain in the butt. It takes me longer to load up the plugin than it's going to for some of these things, but let's see. Hollywood Orchestra, strings, diamond. This is not like the biggest of instruments, but let me just like load up one of these things, replace. And once it actually figures out where it's going, then like never a drop note, never a missed file load or anything. And I'm doing a live stream with a kind of a weird audio driver, but my I/O buffer size is 32 samples and never missed a beat. I mean, the internal drive on this thing is incredible. But if you are going to use an external drive, the faster the better. Make sure you have all the right cables to connect, do speed tests, read a lot of reviews, any library. So that's why I was showing that one, because it's not the factory library, but that's an orchestral bank that's from a different company. And I don't have any issues. I mean, everything loads up. I can load up a gallon of instruments, and it's just never hits the ceiling. It always just pipes it out. But not all external drives are equal. And you need to make sure you get one that's fast, and you need to make sure you get the right cable and you plug it into the right port on your computer, depending on what computer you got. And yeah, I mean, definitely figure that out, because if you get any of those that's wrong, you have a bottleneck and then it doesn't work right. So you definitely have to make sure that you research it up a little bit. But it's possible to do it. But I don't even know how big my sample library is on there right now. Let me look real quick. East west. Let me do a file size on this. It'll run in the background for a minute because it's calculating the size. And I've gone back and forth with East West. I've used their Composer Cloud. Right this moment, I'm not subscribed to it. I'm just using all the banks over the years that I purchased from them, all the Hollywood instruments, which are just fantastic, and the symphonic choirs and the symphonic orchestra Platinum Plus. And so it's like I've got a bunch of stuff from them, and they all sound really good still for what I use them for. Bjorn says, I store all my samples and libraries on 2 terabyte Samsung T7s. Really snappy at only 1,000 megabytes per second. That's pretty typical speed for like, you don't want to go anything below that, I guess. Mr. Fred says, looking to buy a Mac Mini M2 later in the year. Currently on a 2013 iMac. I mean, 2013 iMac is pretty much... And don't take this the wrong way. That's like Stone Age for Apple. That's their worst fear, is that someone can somehow do their work on a 2013. And you can. That's the ironic thing. It's like don't give into the publicity that says somehow you're not able to create on an old computer. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because music does not come from our tools. It comes from someplace else, right? Let's talk about some platitudes. It comes from inside your heart. I'm just kidding. But it does come from your imagination and your creativity. And if you can't make music on a 2013 computer with those tools, then the problem is not the tools. The problem is that you're a tool. You're the issue at that point. And so make music on those old tools until you can no longer, until it breathes its last breath, or until you come into some money, or until your clients, if you build the clients and work in a studio, pay you enough, upgrade it after the people come. And so that's, I think, my thing. So my East-West library is 1 terabyte big. That's a lot of files. That's all of the orchestras and choirs and all that stuff. And some really nice pianos, Storm Drum, Raw, Voices of Passion, Goliath. All of that stuff sounds so good. And I highly recommend those libraries. But, I mean, a terabyte, that's a lot of stuff. And Mr. Fred says it's still going strong, 32 gigabytes of RAM. Yeah, I mean, RAM is great. I was running, before I got the Ultra, I knew that this computer was coming. And so as a stopgap, I got one of the Mac Mini M1s. And I was really curious, so I got the 8 gig of RAM one, which is, nothing. But it uses the hard drive so efficiently as virtual RAM that I never really had issues. It could even run some of my bigger banks, and then I would freeze them before using, I couldn't use 4 or 5 big banks, but I could use some big banks, and then just freeze the tracks. And that computer is a beast. I was so excited when this thing came out, the Ultra, because it's even a bigger beast. But I've got the M1 Ultra with 64 gigs of RAM, and it's a monster. And the freeze function got better. For a long time, the early days of the freeze function in Logic were horrible, because with the freeze function, it used to be you would freeze and it would pull everything off of the processor, but it would leave everything in the RAM. So if you had a big bank and you froze it, it would leave all the samples loaded and your computer couldn't do anything. So you'd have to bounce it to an audio file and unload the instrument, save it as a preset so you could always reload it. but it was such a pain. Now it actually removes all the stuff from the RAM, and so freeze function currently works as good as it's ever been. But I can't remember exactly when they added that. A couple years ago now, but for a long time, the freeze function was one of the worst ones on any piece of software out there, and it lasted for years in that horrible state. Apple never really wanted to make that right. I think that they kept on thinking, "Ooh, we don't want to make it easy not to buy a new computer, so let's do this so that people have to buy the new computer." And so it's kind of a pain. Let's see, Mr. Fred, are you using Open Core Legacy Patcher? Cool. Yeah, I haven't used the Open Core Legacy Patcher kind of thing. But there's some smart people out there, smart people who want to be able to do things their way. And so it's kind of a nice thing to be able to bend the rules in some of those ways. Kind of fun. Other questions or anything else? This is going to be about another 8 minutes for this stream. I would like to go for a whole another hour. I love having these conversations, but I think because it's late, I got some. It's not that late, but it's getting into the evening time, so I want to make sure we wrap it up. GB Logical says, when saving logic files, should I have everything checked? I forgot what the default set is. And I say no, for some big reasons. There's a time when you do want some of that checked. Let me think about this for a second. Assets. So this is what I have right now, and I'll zoom up on this a little bit. So we have copy audio files into project. Yes. Typically, unless I have like a folder that I'm bringing stuff in from and I don't want to duplicate everything, then I turn that off. Convert audio file sample rate when importing. Yes, I do that too. That way it doesn't play at funny speeds. But it usually gives you a dialogue and then you can decide some additional features. And then copy. Oop, I just played some orchestra there. Copy sampler audio files into project. Not usually. Because if I'm loading up a bunch of instruments that are sampler files, I don't want all of those copied into the project. Most of the time, if I'm taking this to another studio or to a different computer, then I can, if it's one of the default ones from Logic, then download it there if they don't have it somehow all downloaded. Or if I know that I'm going to be using their computer, but my session, I've got some of my own sampled audio files, then I'll just make sure I've got those on a drive. Alchemy's the same thing. Ultrabeat's the same thing. I do sometimes check the Space Designer impulses because I use a lot of external impulses. So that one I will typically check when I'm doing that. But I won't do the movie file project, and I definitely won't do Apple's sound library content. But that's just because I'm rarely using Apple's sound library content. Ooh. So that's an answer. Mr. Fred says, I like working in audio, gets me to finish stuff. So true, no regrets. Okay, I'm just following along on a conversation in the chat. Sounds awesome. Other questions? This is a good time if you have any. I can't promise I'll have the answers, but I certainly will try. And if we don't have the answers, we can make a video at a different time. See you later, Mr. Fred. Get some sleep at some point. Ooh, I like the early morning crowd from across the pond. Good people. Let's see if there's any other questions or comments. I finally have finished, I think, this other song I've been working on. And Fred, Rappaport. Mostly you missed at the beginning just the talk about the new update, which was the new, it fixes an analysis for flex pitch issue that was going on. So that was the main demonstration we did. And then we've just been talking. See you later, Bjorn. Or unless you're still here and they're just saying goodbye to everybody else. But I was about to digress for the next couple minutes and play a little bit of this tune. I finally am finishing, but do I think the waveforms are too small? I mean, it depends on what you're asking. Waveforms are all just subjective depending on what you have them set to. So you have your waveform tool here, which allows you to, like, you know, change them all. So it doesn't really do much. But sometimes I've got, you want dynamic range. So that means if you're having a singer sing and they stay at one volume the entire time they're singing, that's one form of music, I guess, one form of musical experience. But most of the stuff I'm doing has like soft spots and loud spots and things in between. And so it's like I'd rather have some headroom where I don't clip out and then things end up being super soft sometimes. So like this song, the waveform is at the beginning look horribly small. But I mean, let's see how they sound, I guess. Here I am, trying hard to understand why we never met before. Imagine what we had in store. Here you are, half a world away from me, thinking of the things to say. Try to change our yet. But I don't actually care what they look like. What's most important is what you're hearing when you listen to them. If you hear like some hiss and some noise floor creeping in, then maybe you've got the preamp turned up too loud and the sound source too far away or not loud enough. And so then you adjust it. But if you're doing something and it sounds okay, then trust your ears on that. Don't trust your eyes. That's for sure. And because it's all subjective, because this thing moves around, it doesn't really mean anything sometimes, unless you know exactly what it is. So listen, you can trust your levels maybe more than anything. So if you're really worried about something, put on, one of our metering tools and see exactly where. Here I am, trying hard to understand why we never met before. So it's not as loud as it could be, but then like the next phrase, it's like you can see it gets louder. And so there's going to be, variety of things happening. Plastidon says, hi there, I had a question on tracking. Do you use low latency mode, then take it off so your plugins are working, like compression, etc.? I use low latency mode a whole heck of a lot less than I used to, even with projects like this. So I sang some of these vocals after the project already had, all of these tracks on it. And I left it, like right now, it's at 32 sample buffer. And I could record into this and be fine. There might be a little bit of a delay because some of these plugins do induce a little bit of latency. But as long as, for me, it's manageable, then I'm fine. So ever since getting the Ultra, I use low latency mode significantly less, which is nice. But I still do have to use it every once in a while because every once in a while, and like look at how many of these plugins get pulled off. It's only the pitch correction on that one track. Not even the other tracks. I wonder what it is about that one. I don't know. That's a mystery to me. why maybe that one is pushing the whole thing over. And so I have no idea. When I put it into input monitoring, then it turns it off. That's why. That one must have it on too. Okay, that was why. So when it goes live with input monitoring, it's going to turn off on any of them. But it's just the pitch correction. And typically I like to actually do my vocals with that turned on, since it's an effect I use. And so I'll put up with whatever like delay is there. And so that'll be fine. Fred says, mix sounds nice. Thanks. I've actually been working on it, and it's pretty much, I think, unless I've listened to it in various places now, and it sounds like what I want it to, so I think I'm happy with it. Immersive says, couldn't find release notes. What's the newest? Here are, let me see if I have those still open. No, I don't. So release notes are just one thing. It's super, super simple. And that is that it's fixing a flex pitch thing, and it actually includes a tutorial on how to reanalyze the audio files if you've had the issue. So pretty straightforward for this one. Nothing else. As far as I can tell, there's no talk of bugs or optimizations or anything. It's literally just an inaccurate flex pitch analysis that you can redo now, and it fixes it. I ran into this problem when recording in loop into take folders. It would screw up the pitch every time. I came up with a workaround, which I made a video about, but this now actually just fixes it straight up. Let's see. Plastidon says, I have the Mac Studio Max. Find that I have to put it on with a guitar or drum plugins I use at 128. Yeah, I mean so yes, I could see that. If you're playing guitar into Logic through those things, guitar players are notoriously good at sensing latency. I mean, they have this thing where it's like they strum and the sound goes through like pickups into an amp, and it's like, you know, the speed of electricity, which is quite fast. And so anytime you put latency in the chain, it like rocks their world. And so you actually have to, especially with guitar, keep that all down because it really can mess up the feel of a guitar player. And so that would be, if I was doing more guitar work, either myself or somebody else in Logic like that, then I would definitely be optimizing the lows. I'm surprised though you're working at 128 instead of even lower. The max is pretty good and should be able to handle lower. And lower is more responsive. So there's that. Okay. Let's wrap up in the next like 5 minutes. If there's anything else that you're dying to ask, this is a great time. Move that off screen. I might have just, oh yeah, I had it open before too. Okay, cool. I'll remember that. I think the only thing I'm still waffling on this song are two of the transitions between chorus and bridge and chorus. Is this your dream? What I see? Do you see that I see? Here you are, right where you belong, right where I belong, at the end of it all. Where we started from, where we ended up, on a shooting star. Now you know just how far we're alive. just noticed my side chain on that synth part was on the wrong one, and they're all mislabeled, so I need to. We are where we started from, where we ended up on a shooting star. Now you know just how far a light into outer space, to the end of time, and here we are, where we started from, where we ended up on a shooting star. Now you know just how far a light. So that synth part is supposed to come down when the words are there and then pump up in the cracks. And so I just had to reset that. I'm glad I saw that. Cool. Plastidon says, I saw some news about Apple hiring a guy from Universal Audio. Curious what that would mean for Logic. We don't know yet, but hopefully good things. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually looking at a Universal Audio interface for reasons, but they've always made great stuff. They've always done something kind of that nobody else is really doing well right now. They've got amazing plugins, amazing hardware. They even have microphones and other things that they're making. They have their own digital audio workstation now, which is one of the reasons why I'm looking at the interface, because I want to do a Logic versus Luna comparison, just to see what it is we're missing. But I think it'll be interesting. Okay, cool. Let's pull the plug on this. We've got people leaving the room faster than I can even count. Thanks for watching. Thanks for coming on board. And good luck with everything. If you have any other questions or anything, just send a message or put a comment on one of the videos. But thanks to everybody for being here. Talk to you later.